Thank you very much for having us this evening. And we're looking forward to having hopefully a good discussion with you all about something that we think is very, very important in terms of just this case tracker project, but also in terms of our organization. So first, let me introduce ourselves. Yeah, I think we have a slide for that, Stephen, but my name is Lisa Wayne, and I'm the Executive Director for the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. The National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers is the largest defense bar organization in the country. We have more than 10,000 members all over the country who are not only private lawyers, but public defenders, court appointed lawyers, lawyers that defend the accused around the country and around the world. We have affiliates outside of this country as well. I'm a longtime defense lawyer. I've been practicing law for almost 40 years around the country, both in state and federal court. Also a law professor, and lots of things in my long life. So now I'm here as the executive director doing really cool things around the country. And the tech part of our organization that knows all the geeky, cool stuff about the tech world is Stephen Logan. Go ahead, Stephen.
Thanks, Lisa. Uh, Stephen Logan. I'm NACDL's Chief Operating Officer. I've been with the association for about 16 years now in various roles. Um, Started as the IT manager and also had the pleasure of working on several of our pro bono efforts, um, which in some ways kind of led into this effort because of the contacts we built through those pro bono work, through our clemency and compassion release work. Um, that's brought this on, and also learn some of the lessons we learned from those efforts.
Yeah, and Stephen's being very humble. I think it's really cool that someone who has the IT background has really expanded the scope of what he's doing in the nonprofit world for a righteous cause. And I think it's a lesson for a lot of you probably here who aren't maybe not feeling so fulfilled in a corporate job or doing coding or wherever that might be. He's taken on, something that has a cause and a mission, and I think that extends anyone's career in this and we need it. And so he's being super humble. Clemency and the commutation program that we had at NACDL was responsible for the release of hundreds of people around this country. It was Stephen and the way that he set up the programming and the ability of our volunteer lawyers around the country to effectively and efficiently file applications for people to get their sentences commuted was because of Stephen. And frankly, the pardon office, when it was under Biden, took on the way that he did it and asked that he come in, if they could steal the way he did it and use it because it was so much more efficient than how the was doing it. So I want to make sure that you all know that because I think that's really a wonderful thing about taking your job from a limited purpose to a greater purpose in the world. So all right, so our NACDL and our mission, and I think we just want to make sure that you all know what kind of organization we are because we do a lot of projects from clemency and commutation to compassionate release, meaning people in the federal system who are sick or dying or have some kind of disease or not being treated well for a number of reasons. That we file compassionate releases, trying to get people's sentences reduced. We are attacking mass incarceration. We have a strike force that helps our lawyers around the country fight the overreaching of the government. We hold prosecutors their feet to the fire in terms of prosecutorial misconduct. We teach lawyers around the country on how to effectively represent their clients, from trial skills to new ways in the law. I mean, I can go on and on and on about all the things that NACDL is doing, and hopefully, I will inspire you all to join us in some way in that mission because we're doing cool stuff around the country. This program and the tracker project came to us, like Stephen said, based upon some of the other projects that we had been doing, commutation and clemency, that uses volunteer lawyers because this organization is based on volunteers, like a lot of nonprofits. We have a huge board of lawyers from around the country, and we have a huge membership of volunteer lawyers who come up with great ideas that can't always be completed unless we have the skills, the workforce, and the money to support that. Because again, we are a nonprofit. So, one of the things that we all were feeling inside the organization was the Trump administration. We're doing things very differently. We're handling criminal cases, commutations, pardons, just the way that they were dealing with protest, the way that they dealt with the J6, the January 6th, um, the people who were convicted of the riots and the things that happened on January 6th. Things were really being handled differently. So a wonderful lawyer by the name of Steve Salke, who was a partner at a big law firm in DC, who had retired, said, I really am feeling like we should be doing something. And one of the things that NACDL tries to do is we are not a political organization. We are a bipartisan organization concerned with criminal legal reform that comes in many different shapes and sizes, from white collar cases, people who are multi-billionaires accused of crimes, people who are in tech industry, doctors, to people who are poor, who have no access to counsel, to justice, all across the board. So that affects Americans and citizens and people who live in this country in many different ways. So we saw this escalation in what we thought was federal prosecution that looked like it was retaliatory, that looked like it was escalating, meaning we were seeing more. And whether or not there was questionable appointment authority, meaning who was handling the cases, who were the AUSAs, is the Assistant United States Attorneys, which is what is equates to district attorneys in the state. Those are the prosecutors, the government, and that we didn't understand why these cases were being prosecuted. In the federal system, normally what happens is that charges go to a grand jury, opposed to the state, where in the state, the DAs can bring a case by complaint, meaning they think they have probable cause or and some kind of legal grounds to bring charges, and they bring a complaint, and they can also take it to the grand jury. So you can do both in the states, but in the federal system, you generally see it by grand juries. And what we know were there were lots of grand juries being convened, and there didn't seem to be any transparency in what was actually going on. Stephen, I don't know if you want to add to that from your viewpoint.
Um, just to tag on to it, like we were definitely seeing different elements around the country, and that's what brought Steve and other volunteers kind of brought that's what brought them together was, and we'll talk about this, but just that as the title of our talk mentions, it's cataloging that because um, it's easy to lose the forest for the trees, as the saying goes. And when you're if you're Lisa, you can definitely speak to this. When you're in trial, you're focused on your case, um, and you don't necessarily can see what's happening around you. And that was one of the big things that brought to this effort.
Yeah, so I see there people are asking questions, so we'll get to those, but lots of good questions. I'm excited. So let's go to the next slide, Steve. So I think you all know, I mean, I imagine that if you're on social media and you're like me, and even though I'm older than some of you, and you probably think she probably reached the old paper newspaper, you read that, but I also immediately look at my social media, and I'm on looking at, what is happening in Minnesota, what is happening in New Jersey, what is my Insta saying, I'm not a big TikToker. I don't trust that as much in terms of news sources, but I do look at those things, and I look at X, uh, previously known as Twitter, I guess, alias is Twitter. And I pay attention to what the social media feeds are saying, and watching what's going on. And we know these public protests that were in Minneapolis, that these anti-ICE protests. I mean, Minneapolis was the center of everything. And interestingly enough, they were when George Floyd was killed as well. It was Minneapolis. I mean, it's interesting to think of Minnesota, right, is the epicenter of all of this activism that has been going on, but they have been the epicenter. And so we were watching the public protests and the response, and we watched it in Los Angeles, and we watched it, the sandwich guy. And we live in DC. NACDL is based in DC. I'm in San Francisco right now because San Francisco is actually my home, but I live part-time in DC. And it was great in DC. You had posters all over the city of the sandwich guy, and everybody was really rooting for the sandwich guy. And that was something we had really never seen before, that there was really a response and a resistance to protesters who we normally believe have not only a First Amendment right to protest, but this country has been built on that kind of disagreement with the government. And that these people were being arrested and treated that way they were, even just detained, handcuffed, even if you're released, that can be very traumatic for you. And we're seeing these jurors responding by by walking them. We call these walks, but finding these individuals not guilty. The grand jury resistance to indictments in Los Angeles has been remarkable. Even those who have been indicted are being found not guilty. That means jurors, people in your community who are sitting on on these juries or on these grand juries are telling the government, "We're not going to do this," pushing back and telling us no. So that is something we have not seen in the history of this country in a very, very long time. But what we wanted to know is the people who were being brought in front of the grand jury, witnesses. That's a secretive process. We want to know, why was the grand jury not indicting? Why were they not bringing what we call a true bill? Why was this? What's really going on? We haven't. It's all very secretive, and so that's part of this tracker, is to let the public know this is exactly what's going on. So these are some of the ways that we've been responding, is litigation and advocacy, telling lawyers how to do this right, setting up the resources so that we can help them do it right. We do not do individual representation at NACDL. So that means, and it's very, very hard for someone like me who's done individual representation for a very long time. We get a lot of letters from a lot of incarcerated folks who want our help, and we cannot do that. We're not funded for that. And I would have to be the largest law firm in the country, frankly, to help all the people individually. But we can help guide them to the places that can help them. We can help the lawyers and give them the resources and support them so that they can help them. And we can give them the training and the support. So we decided launch this criminal case tracker, another resource for our lawyers around the country.
And Lisa, if I may add one thing, since there was a question in the chat,
Okay.
a lot of our advocacy over the last, I would say, 9 months has been around resources for public defense and appointed counsel. Um, there was a time that private attorneys who are appointed to do federal work were just, the budget had run out and they weren't getting paid. So we tried to collect stories together to share those with elected leaders, members of Congress. And we also do a good bit of work at the state level too on resources and caseloads and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And I was a public defender. I started out as a public defender in Colorado, one of the best public defender systems in the country because it is well resourced and money is given out to the lawyers, so that makes a big difference. And I was a public defender for 13 years before I went into private practice. So it is something that is very important to me as the head of this organization and very important to the board and the leaders of the organization as well. So we do a lot of support and training. The head of our public defense support system is a woman by the name of Bonnie Hoffman. Bonnie was also a public defender herself in Virginia, and she's brilliant and she gives support to lawyers around the country going and testifying in front of the legislature and the state, helping them set up models to help them, get the right resources, litigate, and help them litigate when they're not getting the resources. So we're all about helping as many folks as we can out there. So we launched the tracker, and we just put out the report, which is 20 pages of the first year. That is on our website, the NACDL, the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyer website. And it is something we will provide you. We'll actually put the link up for you all, so that because I think you have to be a member, don't you, Stephen, to actually.
Not to access the report.
Okay, good. So they can access the report. So we'll make sure to put that link up for those of you who are interested. And please share it and spread it amongst, your friends and colleagues. You don't have to be a lawyer at all to care about this issue and to want to know about it. And those of you who may be interested in politics or working in politics, make sure your legislators know that we're doing this because you can do it in the state. What we do on the federal level can be done in the state level. And we know at this time, under this administration, that state action and the states are the power to control so much of what's going on in this country. So it's as important for the state as it is for the federal system. So we did this. We've been looking at the cases. We have a number of lawyers, again, volunteer lawyers, where the cases come in to us. We vet them. Stephen takes a look at them. We have another lawyer. His name is Nathan Pisno, who Nathan is a longtime white collar lawyer. He vets them. Then they go and we look at them to see, are these the kind of cases that we want to take a look at, that we want to do an analysis on? Are they appropriate for the tracking? And once they're vetted and we go through that process, then those reports are created. They're put up on the website, and they're there to be used by not only the public. The analysis can only be used by the defense lawyers unless you have special permission, you have a special project. And we have reporters that are using this tracking system and going crazy. So I was just on the phone yesterday with an AP reporter, Bloomberg, the Wall Street Journal, Time, LA Times, the New York Times, the Washington Post. All of them are very interested in this project because they want to see what is really happening here and who is tracking it. And so I think that that's important. Stephen's more in the weeds on how we're curating those cases.
And one thing I do want to mention that a lot of what's going into the system is public information. There are court records and briefs that have been filed and things like that. But even though that information is public, it's not easy to get to. So one of the big goals with this effort, and where we see that this project's important, is that it's collecting information that is fragmented, because we use media reports and news releases and things like that, and merge that together with the case files. But also, as Lisa mentioned, like there is a lot of curation There's a team of volunteer practitioners, very experienced practitioners, who are looking through the cases and like one, which is a case that should be tracked or shouldn't be tracked, but also what are the briefs, what are the documents that are going to be useful, because a case can have hundreds of documents that have been filed.
Right.
And so what they do is they go through those and like, okay, these are the five, these are the 10 that are going to be useful for the folks coming in and viewing it.
Right. And I think what's really important for you all to know is we do not insert our personal opinions in those analyses. And when we are curating the case, again, this is bipartisan. It is what it is. I think for me, the most important thing as head of this organization is that we're putting out the facts. They are the facts, not my opinion about what should have been done with the case, not my opinion about how poorly litigated it was, or if I had been the lawyer, I would have done something different. It is simply the facts about the case. And so I think that's important for you all to know when you're talking about this. We are in a unique position because our lawyers are actually the lawyers in this country who are trying cases. So a lot of people hear these statistics in the federal system. Only 90, something like 96% of cases actually go to trial out of all the cases filed. And that seems so weird, right? Because one of the things that makes this country so unique is the right to go to trial, the ability to go to trial. And what that means is I'm challenging the government's accusation against me. I'm challenging whether or not you can prove this allegation against me beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's a constitutionally driven right that's very different in our country than other countries. I have that constitutional right to challenge you. So at the end of the day, it's this. Just because you say it happened doesn't mean it happened. Maybe it happened. Maybe something different happened. Maybe something lesser than what you think happened. Or maybe it didn't happen at all. And that's so important. So we have lawyers from around the country who have experience that can take a look at this, that, they're led by people who are lawyers, who are in the weeds. The president of the organization, which is a volunteer lawyer, every year our president changes, but you get to come up the ranks in the organization and you become the president. I'm a past president. I used to be the president of the organization. But our president now is from Minnesota. He is a lawyer that is a practitioner in Minnesota in federal court and is involved in some of these cases and knows what these cases look like, knows what a real terrorism case looks like, knows what a real conspiracy looks like. And so all of that's really, really important in terms of our position to lead on this work. We also have the staff expertise like Stephen, the data-driven projects that we have done, because what we know in this day and age is show me the data. Prove to me that, in fact, the data supports your claim of mass incarceration or systemic racism in the system, or that public defenders are not being resourced adequately. Why does that matter? What is the data that allows me to make conclusions? That's super important, and that's one of the things that makes us a leader in this space. We're also backed by a 501c3, which is a foundation which matters in terms of getting money. So we were one of the organizations that the Trump administration cut our funding. We lost $3.1 million in funding because we were supporting access to counsel. That was our public defense projects around the country. That was cut. And because we are training lawyers on death penalty litigation in the state system around the country, lawyers in the South that get paid $1,200 to do a death penalty case where you are literally trying to save someone's life for $1,200. No resources, no support whatsoever. And that's the kind of work that we were doing. And this administration is all about right on crime and making sure they bring the death penalty back, but they want to make sure the other side doesn't have the money to defend those cases. That money was cut from our funding, and so our foundation really, we are out here, like a lot of nonprofits, asking for money so that we can continue the good work.
Um,
You,
so
yeah.
getting into what we built itself, we definitely needed to move quickly because we saw what was happening, as Lisa has mentioned. We saw what was happening in the world, and we needed to get this up quick. We actually were able to go from concept to launch in about in 120 days, which included a few holidays. But one of the big ways we were able to do that is that we were leveraging what we had done in the past. Even though this was a very different project from our clemency work and compassionate release work, we definitely used some of those ideas in here. So it was some from the software standpoint and the data, but also just what is a good workable way that things can flow. As Lisa mentioned, we have a couple people looking at things. Less not because we're afraid somebody's going to say something inappropriate, but more we want to be right because we have people coming and looking at this information and either using it in their case if they're a criminal defense attorney or building an article from the media or a study. So we definitely wanted to make sure we had that right. uh, it's one of those better to be right than fast in some cases. Um, we used as much as our existing infrastructure as I could. Um, we have a very large website with a lot of materials on it, and we tried to kind of do as least amount of customization as possible, so we could get things quick. Made some compromises as we all do when launching something. Tried to use some off the shelf, and then uh, did a lot of iterative real time development. It's just, we've used the phrase, we built the airplane as we're flying it. That is very true. Um, the system is still a work in progress. We'll talk quickly at the end about some of the features we're hoping to have in the future, but we're just adding new things now. Um, our target audiences, Lisa already touched on this, but uh, our NACDL's primary audience is criminal defense attorneys. We wanted to make this a tool that they could use to help in the defense of their clients. They could see what's happening. Maybe they could find a brief that they could use as a model. That's been a cornerstone of what NACDL has done and is around those trainings. So this was definitely to be a resource tool, but we also wanted it to be there for journalists. They're really, the old saying, if even if something is true but no one hears about it, it didn't happen. Um, that's really important here too. Journalists are coming in, they're looking at this. We've invited some, we've gotten feedback from some on like how they can go in and see it so they can see some of the trends and cast some light into some of these issues. We have professors who are using this in their either in both in their coursework but also their studies. Um, that's still new. The project only launched a few months ago, but heard from one or two who are trying to use this as a starting point for what they're working on. And then finally, if there are elected officials or judicial officials who can see this and this can bring some attention to those issues, that's great. One of our parts of our mission is around the education on the inequities that are happening. A big focus on this was on the user journey. Um, so really tried to look at who was coming in and give them their kind of different path. For anybody who's done personaing and things like that, which I think many of you have. So looked at different ways that people could access it. They all get to the same place, but Some people are more visual. Some people are looking at it from a location perspective. So we have an interactive map. Some people just want to see it all at once and then do a control F and find what they're looking for. So we have list views. And then we also have like keyword searches. So people can go in and find like specific terms that they're looking for and things like that. We have dynamic filtering for jurisdictional information, the prosecutors, fact patterns, and charges. A place that this is really helpful is on the analytic side. So, like, you can go in and see all of the cases that we've tracked that have this top level charge, be they somebody who's convicting, be they a protester who is convicted of assault. That's one of those places that we've seen a lot of upcharging, which is you take what is normally a lower level offense and you upcharge it so you can maybe get a plea. We've seen things that previously would have, if they were brought, would have been brought as a misdemeanor, are being charged as felonies. And people who are being, the consequence of losing their freedom for decades for what would have been maybe a fine. The infrastructure, really, we built an internal tracking tool. Um, this is both a place for data prep and data collection, but it was also a chance to prototype the data model. As I had mentioned, there was a lot of iterative development. So worked through in that internal tracking tool. What are the fields we want to track? How do we want to build our filters? What data do we need? What data do we not need as a way to prototype the build out? So that was a very helpful tool for letting us go fast because if it didn't work quite right, it was internal. It was internally embarrassing versus publicly embarrassing, which is always nice. And that's a place we were able to leverage um, off the shelf. So it wasn't all custom built using like web-based tools that we could kind of set up quickly and play around with and get started. We already talked about the review process. But one of the important things for us is, as I had mentioned, uh, we don't push the data out through an API. It would cut down on the work. It would be great. But we really want there to be that human in the middle. And that's really important for us because we have strict data controls. And that's again because we know who's going to be using this information. And that's where, again, we want to make sure it's right as much as we can. We all make mistakes, but we have multiple people who look things over, and how it gets published to the website is one of those checks. So next steps, we have recently integrated appellate data as these cases that we're tracking are moving on to appeal, both from the conviction, but also the the facts of the case. There could be appeals mid case. So we've integrated that appellate data in. That was for those of you who are in the kind of the data side or the development side. Anytime you do one of a thing, not too hard, but anytime you have a two of a thing, it's 10 times as hard. So a case can have 4 appellate entries. So there was a lot of thinking and brainstorming of how we would do that. We're working on expanding the case coverage. We started out with a few select types of cases to research, and we're expanding that now. Part of that is through receiving cases from our members and others. Adding additional filtering tools, that's always a dream, have more ways to filter things. And as Lisa mentioned, the project has released its first report. It was a look back at the 25, so the first year of this review, because we started really looking at cases in 2025. And what were the things that were observed? Spoiler alert for those of you who may go in and look at the report. The two big things were that the the rise in no bills, which, as Lisa mentioned, no true bills. That's when grand juries reject the charges and don't indict, but also the missing accountability. A lot of that data is not being reported as it would have been traditionally. So not only are there more than there had been in the past, but also they're not being reported as much as they had been. Um, and then findings of higher levels of acquittals, which we had mentioned earlier. Um, so I'll put up here, as Lisa mentioned, these are three core links. There's the project page, nacdl.org/case tracker, the report, nacdl/case tracker report, and then the obligatory plug for the foundation that Lisa had mentioned, um, nacdl.org/support, which takes you to information about the foundation. The foundation is critical in supporting this effort, as many others. Um, I did see, and I think Lisa may have, I saw Lisa in the chat, but there was talks of we have a large criminalization of reproductive rights effort. Um, that's one of our big projects that we have going on right now, along with our trainings of capital cases, capital defenders, and public defense work. And so with
Yep. Thanks, Steve.
that,
Yep. Thanks. And and good questions. So um
Okay, great. Yeah, so I think, let me see. Yes, a lot of great questions, and it looks like you've started to answer some of them. I'm wondering, Lisa or Stephen, if there's any particular response you want to expand on in the responses that
so
you've already,
yeah,
and then we're going to go to new questions.
yeah, no, I think, look, I think were able to, obviously, we're going to share the work because we're going to have the slides and you'll have the links to be able to get the tracker case information. Take a look at our website. There may be things that you're interested in or that you know people who are interested in it. I thought I think it was Howard put up here about um, the, the DOJ accusing the Biden administration of weaponizing abortion access law, weaponizing work group misuse of the FACE Act, which is the access to clinics. Interesting. That's just coming out 30 minutes ago on the Washington Post. So I appreciate that you put that up. We're very involved in this space. Again, it is about criminalization of women in pregnancy, how they're policing women, Plan B, policing pharmacists, policing health workers, policing midwives, policing poor people, genealogy and genealogical testing, where they're going back and digging up old graves or old sites and doing genealogical testing of women who are accused of perhaps miscarrying and being afraid and burying their children or having abortions because they were poor and they didn't know where to go. And now they're doing genealogical testing. So the science and there's so many changes that are happening in the area, and we're working on all of that. And we have funders that are helping us on that as well. Um, this is a massive project, but look, um, this is what it's all about, is being able to be here with you all, hopefully inspiring some of you. Hopefully, if you have some really rich aunts and grandparents or partners that want to give us money and you go, we heard the coolest thing tonight and we should be throwing money at them. We need it. We're all in this together and it's important. So how would any normal person afford to challenge a genealogy expert? So what happens is if I have a public defender, there is resources in most public defender systems where I can hire experts to be able to counter whatever the government's expert might be saying about the genealogy. Within NACDL, we actually have experts. We have a team that's called the Fourth Amendment Center team, and we have the DNA expertise on the genealogy where we are able to help people counter, get them to experts, get them to professors or people that may want to help you on these cases. Science is everything in these cases. The genealogy stuff, the DNA, facial recognition. One of our cases is going to the Supreme Court April 27th. It's called Charterie, I'm going to spell it wrong, Artrie. It is a geofence case, which you all, I assume, would be very interested in because it's surveillance and it is against, Google has a lot to do with this, and it is about surveillance of folks and catching them up in a net. And we are on the oral argument in front of the Supreme Court on this Monday, April 27th. You will be hearing that case, and that's NACDL. So we have
And
a lot of experts on that in the tech side that counter these experts when you get these kind of experts from the government.
and Chatri specifically is around using uh, Google data, metadata to do mass surveillance of locate geodata.
Yeah.
Um, and I do want to. Somebody had asked about how many folks are using the because we have a invitation for people to share a case. It's ebbed and flowed, which is not surprising given the nature of criminal defense attorneys. One of the places that we always have to be careful of is people can't talk about their clients specifically because they have the attorney-client relationship. But we've probably had, I would say, maybe 50 in the last 30 to 45 days, which is around what I would expect for both the type of work that it is and the nature of our client, of our individuals. Um, and one of the places that with, as Lisa mentioned, with our different efforts is some of those cases can feed in. There's a question of if there are specifically cases, a tracking tool, similar tool for Fourth Amendment cases around, especially around digital rights. There are we that is not something that we track on like the website or things like that. We do some of that internally because, as Lisa had mentioned, one of the cool things with that Fourth Amendment Center project is they're able to do trainings and take questions from our members and public defenders and groups like that when they have those kind of unusual cases. Um, we are one of the future goals with some of the infrastructure that we built with the Case Tracker project is to look at other types of cases that are. This one is specifically targeted to unusual prosecutions, but using some of the tools and the lessons that we learned to look at some other types of case. We do election work, as Lisa said. Our we don't take a stance at elections. We just think that you should not be able to criminalize voting. So we have a committee who works on that. And so that's one of the things we've talked about. Like, should we start trying to make catalogs of those sorts of cases? But one of the things that we are careful of is we are a member of a lot of coalitions. There's a lot of people doing great work around criminalization of reproductive rights, voting rights, and things like that. And we just want to make sure we're not being duplicative of people who are doing some of that.
Right. Yeah, and the facial recognition again, we that was one of our areas, and we have there are people being prosecuted on facial recognition. It's getting better and better. And here's the issue for you all, really, as young people, is that you're very you're much more inclined to give up your Fourth Amendment rights and your facial recognition. So I'll bet most of you use facial recognition on your phone. If you travel in the airport all the time, most of you would probably want to go touchless, which is facial recognition, because it's a heck of a lot faster than if I have to stand in line. So I see a real tension with, that Fourth Amendment right and the right to privacy, which, by the way, was what this country was built on. That's why anyone whose forefathers came from Europe and England and those places, they didn't have the right to privacy. There is no Fourth Amendment in the United Kingdom. And so there is definitely a degradation on that. And you all have to decide, your generations, how important is it to me to have that? And does it really matter? Because you know what? I need to get on my Instagram fast, and dang it, it's a lot easier than putting a code in. I get it. I get it.
And I dropped a link to the Fourth Amendment Center into the chat. One thing, especially for anyone who is interested in kind of the data side of it, we have a report on, it's called the Black Box, where this, when police departments were really starting to use AI-based tools, which are now everywhere, and the risks that went into that, as well as a few other kind of reports on the data side. But one of the things that the Fourth Amendment Center has done is they have done um, like the state of digital surveillance kind of reports and white papers. So those are really great. Some of those are not public because they're geared towards criminal practitioners or public defenders. So please be gracious as you may run into some of those things. May not be accessible, but that is um, you know, to make sure we can get speakers and the nature of the work, some of the stuff that we do have is targeted specifically towards practitioners.
Yeah. And just let us know what you all might be interested in. We're involved in a police transparency database in California. So we have partners in California where we have put together so it's for the public, a database of all misconduct by police officers that have been reported in a database. So even in the public is not just for the defense bar, but if I have bad cops in my community, I can actually look it up, see when they were sanctioned, get the reports, doing all that. That should be in every state in the country, but it has to be funded and there has to be the data and the ability to do it. So there's lots you can do if you just have the tools and the feeling of this is something we want in our cities and on license plate readers, Palantir, all the people that look at what's gone on with that. People are saying we don't want you in our city. Get out. We don't want license plate reader. We don't want Palantir. We're done. So if you come together and you know what you want and you can be united about it, we're winning. We're winning that stuff, and that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of folks, if not in this chat, and definitely within the broader Hacknight community that are interested and have done projects. I think there are some folks who are associated with the Chicago Police Data Collaborative, which is a kind of transparency project of the kind that you talked about, but here in Chicago. So yeah, I think, wow, it's already 8 o'clock. And we will soon transition to the next part because there'll be folks, who are anticipating that and jumping on. But I guess the last question will be, are there any new aspects of the technology side that NACDL, is working on and would like volunteers to help with? I guess I'm also asking that because we also see some students. I'm an educator myself, and there are a lot of young people who are interested in helping and getting engaged in the work. So if there's something that you can share, the folks to reach out, I'd be great to.
So that's really for you, Stephen. I think, look, I would love to have a whole team of tech people in my office to be honestly, because I think that's where it's at. I think so much of the gathering data, it's a matter of being able to fund that, and being able to have the money stream. So even I have. I think that 42 employees, some are virtual, some are in the office, some are lawyers, some are marketers, some are, just a real diverse group of folks. And the more data people we could have, I mean, Stephen would love if he could have a team. He has a lot of things that he would like to do if we had a team.
Um, so specific to be speaking directly to the question, um, there are opportunities for volunteering. It is just by the nature of what we do and the information and the confidentiality of the information we have. It's kind of it can be hard to kind of do that because you just we deal with a lot of data. Even though a lot of it's public, there's still a lot of information. So if there are people who are interested in being involved, welcome to reach out. One of the um, but one of the most important things that folks can do is, as Lisa had mentioned, is to like try to get the word out. Share what's going on with this. If we have other projects that you find interested, that you could talk about with people you know. Um, we our goal is to just as much as we can to educate, which education creates influence. Um, so that is one of the probably the key thing is to amplify the voice of kind of what's happening, both the work we're doing and around. But again, if there are folks who are interested in discrete ways, or if you have ideas, um, we're always open to hearing them. Um, can't say that we can do them all, but as Lisa said, um, we are stretched thin, but always welcome to hear what people are thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we are going to move to the next portion of the evening, but I want to give you a big thank you. If folks can do that in the chat as well. Thank you so much for coming, Lisa and Stephen. Um, and tonight's broadcast, we will be posting it to our YouTube channel in the coming days. So, folks can hear more about the organization and get plugged in, and this out.
Thank you for having us.
Okay. So for attendees